Welcome back to another episode of In Systems We Trust. My name is Marquis. I'm your host, and today I'm speaking with Chloe Handelman. Chloe helps overburdened, purpose-driven businesses to eradicate operational challenges by designing custom operation strategies, processes, and systems. Whether preparing to sell or scale, she supports busy CEOs and founders by downloading their company vision and implementing new operational tactics to save time, earn more money, and reduce the stress of running a business. Welcome to the show, Chloe.
Hey, Marquis. Really happy to be
Hello.
here.
I'm glad we finally got to do this. I know we had to reschedule a couple times, but I feel like it was for the better because I feel like
Yes.
we've changed and grown, and we have so much more to talk about. I mean, not that we ever didn't have enough to talk about, but you know how life works.
Yes.
Yeah, this is really cool. I'm excited to have this chat. I mean, for the listeners, to provide some context, Chloe and I used to work together. She was our senior business analyst at Ditto, the consultancy that I used to run. And when I met Chloe, I mean, the business was in a completely different place. Chloe, you started as a business analyst, I guess, working with a couple of our clients,
Yes.
and we quickly realized that her skills, could be used in just other places of the business. And Chloe led our team of business analysts, was instrumental in rolling out of our new processes and like taking the lead on just like our process improvement overall. And so I just want to say it loud and clear off the top of this episode that I owe the success of Ditto, a lot to the work that Chloe did and led us through. So with that context, again, welcome. Let's dive in.
Thanks, Marquis. I'm blushing over here.
Did I miss anything? I know that was like a really like broad overview, but like let's start there. Like, what did you do
With Ditto or when I
w-
was working
w-
with you?
with Ditto? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
let's start there and talk about um, where we really started. You were working with some clients. There was an opportunity, obviously, within the business to improve how we were working, and you saw some of those opportunities. You were always like the person that was like calling some of them out. So let's kind of start there on like how you got that start and where you really took things.
Yeah, I think it's really fun that we're bringing us back to where we started with when I was on initial client projects, because I think this is kind of how my role often evolves within organizations. I find some companies, I work with or talk with, and they say that they need one thing, right? And that just kind of opens the door, right, to seeing a lot of things that are challenging the business owners or the team members. And that's what we found. And I think at the first discussions, you and I had already kind of started recognizing there might be some value that I could add directly to the company, not just
Yeah.
with the client projects. But what I think is really fun about the work that I do is like I like getting in and jumping into the actual doing role for periods of time, because unless you're in the doing role and the delivery of work, you don't sometimes see all of the challenges that are getting faced. So I think, the first client that I got thrown on, it was just that big messy client, it got, pulled in all different directions. Roles were not clear between our team.
Yeah.
And it just kind of shed light on some of the operational challenges. So then, yes, we were like raising our hands constantly, like, all right, like, how can we improve this next time? How can we improve our internal systems? How can we improve our internal communication about what's going on?
Yeah.
And that was kind of what it's been balled into, just really starting some internal and focusing and having that, you know, bigger attention on focusing on those internal improvement projects, which pretty much is what I transferred into ultimately. Was that was only working on internal projects for the company. So
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, I remember that first project. Like we were still trying to figure out how we were delivering, and like sales were starting to ramp up. And we had a lot to figure out around delivery, right?
yep,
And so yeah, this project was I think it shed a light on a lot of the areas that we needed to focus. And then it was
yep,
out of that we started, these internal, initiatives to improve. And I even remember going back to your onboarding, right? Like I had put out at the point in time, you know, a really robust onboarding program and lots of like next steps and information and context, and you were just poking holes in it, right? Like in a good way. It was like, hey, this doesn't make sense, or this doesn't connect to that. Hey, we should do this. Hey, how do we do this? And then all of a sudden, I'm at this place where I'm the CEO, and I'm like, this is good. This is good. Right? Like I want to hear these things, but at the same time, it's like, oh man, like I thought, you know, we had it together, and that just launched a whole other initiative around improving how we onboarded our team members.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and
So
I think that's the fun in the challenge and the dance, and that I'm always evolving in my ability to communicate with the CEOs or like the founders or the, you know, the team members of, you know, because it's your baby, right? You know, and like I don't want to be like calling your baby ugly, but you know, it's like, you know, the top and the shorts don't match, right? Like, you know,
yeah,
we got a mismatched outfit right now. And that is it's the dance, you know, it's like it's consulting is like an art and a science, right? And that's the art of it, right? How can I deliver? And I know there's probably times that I said things that you probably got off the call and you're like, oh my God, Chloe, stop, right? Like there's too much. You're saying too many problems. But I think that sometimes is the big realization point, and you have to kind of throw that mirror up. And as a ops consultant, it can be challenging when you go into a company and they're like, oh, well, we don't have internal budget for ops, or we don't have, you know, we don't have the space or time. And I'm like, yeah, but like, look at all this, right?
yeah,
You know, and we do need to focus on it. We do need to put some effort towards it. And being able to communicate that and find those slivers of budget and time and resource capacity to actually focus on those pieces, that's
yeah.
where it's yeah, fun and challenging.
And that was one of our problems too, right? Like not being able to find that budget because we had, you know, our team was growing
Yeah,
quickly and they're dedicated to client projects, and we didn't have the internal budget in a lot of cases to involve the necessary team members in those process improvement engagements. And then there was the training and adoption aspect of it
yeah.
as well that we had to like find, you know, budget for so that we can fully align the team. So many challenges, but let's get down to the core of it. I want to know if we can back up a little bit, just like how did you get your start in this world, Chloe? Like, and what inspired you to pursue business process improvement for organizations and CEOs?
Well, my start in the world happened when my mom gave birth to me, so I'll just be clear with that part.
All right, you got
In the
me.
world, yeah, I got you. But no, I as soon as you asked, I was like, oh, I'm gonna make a joke. Um, no, but my background actually is in industrial and systems engineering. So if a lot of people aren't actually familiar what that means, even I think I call the degree technically the wrong degree sometimes. It's a complicated title, but ultimately, industrial engineers focus on creating efficiencies in business or in business, in industry, in engineering, like in so many different factors.
Yeah,
And every time I had a work experience during my studies, in my internships, I did cooperative educations. I took a semester off and just worked the whole time. Everything I was doing was being the intermediary between engineering or a technical field and business people. And from there, I really recognize that there are, you know, often so many cross departmental system challenges that there just needs to be someone who can look at everything and have a
mhm,
holistic understanding and help the players communicate to one another and understand how things are interconnected. And that interested me, and I found that I was good at it. I was able to really have that ability to communicate to the different stakeholders at different levels and understand how their role played into the bigger part. And so fast forward, I started working at Accenture. I was in consulting, looking at same thing. There's always in projects where I was doing process improvement. I was mapping workflows. I was um, implementing change management. They're considering the implications of big tech changes and the change management that needed to go alongside of it. And again, I just like always been super interested in how can I make people's lives easier, because ultimately at the end of the day you go in and you sit with these people and these companies and there's these business challenges, but then you sit at the desk next to someone and they're frustrated, they're upset, they're working long hours. There was this woman working for an insurance company who would come in at like 3 in the morning because the system was broken. And if she didn't come in at 3 in the morning, it would send the wrong thing. So
Oh
she would
man.
have to just go in and sit down at 3 a.m. to stop the auto send of this. I can't remember what it was, but those are the people, that's what I found so much interest in, right? Is the people who are running these businesses and how their lives are impacted by poor systems, by poor training, by poor communication, and poor process, lack of documentation, how people's lives are actually impacted by that.
Mm,
And that's really where my interest began, and it's definitely evolved into who I'm now working with today. that's
yeah.
that's a whole other train of thought of where that I've now evolved into that, but that is from like a technical and like a truly skill set wise. How I kind of got here is through that
Right.
interest and making people's lives better through processes and systems.
Super interesting because it always comes down to the people, right? And
Yeah,
how they're impacted in the day to day. And a lot of my conversations as of late have been around how the people within our systems that we create are impacted.
yeah.
So, does it ever become overwhelming for you? I mean, you're not only taking on the business problems and then needing to strategize ways to improve, but you're also taking on the weight of how these people are impacted and like what they're taking home potentially and how their lives really look at the end of the day. So is it ever too much for you? And then how do you
Hmm.
compartmentalize and figure out next steps?
I think I think a big challenge can be, when taking it so personally. I think that's where I get overwhelmed, where, I'm doing my best, I'm coming up with a system, I'm working really hard, and things start to kind of maybe there's a challenge, right, with the founder or people in the company, and they're not showing up, or they have a change in priorities, or they're not showing up, or if a solution, just we build it out and then again the requirements change, and then the solution I built isn't working, and it's like, wait, that's it's not my fault, like, and it is, I
Yeah,
have responsibility, but like there's so many factors at play. So in those moments I definitely get overwhelmed because I the last thing I want to do is fail. Like, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to screw up someone's company. I don't want to, make someone feel like their investment wasn't worth it. So that like pressure of that when I'm working independently it can be quite overwhelming.
right.
And I think it's also in the same step, it's so rewarding, right? When you can actually then move to the other side. And I know we used to say the saying, we're turning the ship, right?
Yeah,
And like I love that phrase, because it's like we really have to remember that, like, turning the ship into a different direction takes a bunch of time, and it takes a bunch of effort, and it might feel really, 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 really hard. But if we're consistent, persistent, and just really showing up every day,
yeah,
once the ship gets moving in the other direction, it's like, wow, look at the way that all this effort paid off, right? And it was worth making these iterations and changes and improvements.
yeah. Can you talk about, just kind of the focus or how you plan, when it comes to turning the ship, right? We all know it's a gradual thing. You can't turn on a dime. So can you talk about how you break those big rocks down? Because I mean, for the listeners, you and I would be on calls, right? And we would have this big problem, and it was you and I back and forth strategizing, and then I would send you away to go like communicate with the rest of the team and get some feedback. And there were some times where it was clear that I was overwhelmed, right? And it was too much, and I'm like, Chloe, I need you, right, to
Yeah,
take this on. And there was a lot of like trust there as well. But like, to tie that back to your earlier point, right, like the people that you're helping, they need you, and like whether you see it or not, right, like I can tell you, like, having calls back and forth with you was like therapy for me. It was so good because I knew that there was a person on the other side that understood my problems. right? That understood how to fix them and knew we'd have to break them down into these, small steps so we could gradually turn the ship. So I want to, if I haven't already, like, and I probably will like a million times this episode, just like say thank you. But yeah, speak to, and you can use the examples of Ditto or what you've learned since, like, how do you break down these big problems into smaller rocks that are easier to move?
Yeah, this is the fun answer. It depends, right? So the way that we decide to break down the problem is going to depend a lot on the business, the CEO, like in the priorities and the goals of the company, right? So, and priorities and goals, and then also like the most major gaps, right? So if a team has already, and what was really great about like Ditto, for example, like you already had a system for documentation, right?
Yeah.
So when we were doing things, like we could very quickly add SOPs into our database. Like I had a very quick means and like the team's already kind of trained to where to look for information, right?
Yeah.
But when we're in these big change management, like for other clients, like they don't even have that system set up, right? So there's like all these problems and we have to break it down, but like there's sometimes a need to not even break the problems down yet and get some foundational operational pieces in place so that when we do implement the changes, we can actually communicate those effectively to the team, and there's like actually a way to support the team into using these new solutions, right?
Right.
So I think again it does depend on that, but I think truly you hit the nail on the head. One of the beginning spots is building that trust with the CEO, right? Like there was points, and it's building the trust, the CEO trusting me, but me also trusting the CEO to be able to or founder to be able to like speak to or take action on. So sometimes there's this interesting dance between I like for you and I, like I'd come to you and be like, what do you want me to do? And you're like, I don't know, you tell me. And I'm like, okay, okay. But like sometimes like
Yeah.
it would be like it's the thing, and I'm like, no, 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 you need to tell me. Like I can't make this decision. Like this is not a me decision. This is a company like vision
Yeah.
decision, right? And like I can
Yeah.
advise what I would do, but like this isn't my choice, right? So there's the trust in the relationship building, which is really important, and to get to the point as well where yeah, you really can like let go of some of that, you know, with that trust, being able to like let go of some of that decision making control, right? And just allowing things to get rolled out by your trusted ops person, right? To be able to actually do it and go and execute. But other methods in terms of like breaking things down, right? So it's creating an operation strategy, right? So going through doing an assessment of all of the different areas of business, right? Like team management, team communication, internal knowledge, space, client delivery, all these different pieces of business,
Hmm.
going across all those areas, identifying the biggest challenges are, right? And then
Yeah.
again, against the priorities of the business, prioritizing those projects, right? So if we're having major issues with client onboarding, I'm going to focus on that first. If we are onboarding clients and like your product or your service offering is a month over a month renewal and your onboarding is crap and you lose your client after month 1 or month 2 because they didn't get onboarded properly, that's where we're going to start. We're not going to focus on client offboarding like that.
Yeah.
That's not
Right.
important. So it's really knowing the business needs, knowing their highest priorities, and focusing on it. And like some businesses, it might be actually be in sales and marketing, like challenges with that. I know for Ditto, for example, we had a challenge with the sales to delivery handoff for a piece, right? So like
Yeah.
sales and delivery weren't aligned. What we were selling wasn't like project management hadn't been able to assess whether or not they were able to deliver it right in that budget.
Yeah.
And looking at that, we had to fix that handoff piece in order to then build out the delivery model. So it, the fun answer, it depends like how we can
Right.
break things down. But it's first get building that trust and then really understanding the company's vision, mission, um, goals, and major pain points,
Yeah.
blockers, gaps, and, assessing that in order
Yeah.
to come up with a strategic operations plan.
Yeah, and that just reminded me that I think we're seeing a lot of like silos even in inside of Ditto, and a lot of the communication was then fragmented as a result. So sales was me, right? And Chris, Webe was involved for a time as well. But sales happened in a bubble, and then it was handed over to delivery, and then just had to figure out how to deliver it within these confines. And then I think obviously it seemed to be so obvious, but we just didn't take those steps early on, was to bring delivery into the sales conversation, have them be a part of the proposal and the review and the estimations at that stage, right? So it just seemed like it was such an easy example, but without like pausing and really looking at it and assessing, well, where is this breaking down, right? Like we were just kind of spinning our wheels. And like I said, communication was fragmented, and you find yourself in a world of mess, if you're not careful and looking in the right places. So, question here is around, change management, right? Like things are a mess. You're sailing this ship. You need to make changes. Like I think I said to you or someone at one point, like, I just want to stop everything right now. Like stop operations, stop sales, stop absolutely everything, fix it. Like almost like we would take a vacation,
Yeah.
right? Or a break from work and delivery, and just fix everything, bring everyone back, retrain them, and have a fresh start. But that's just not possible when it comes to business, right? So, how do you approach that? Maybe like with some of your other clients, how have you approached that conversation where it's like, we have to move this through in stages, test, iterate, right, and then move on to the next stage?
There's what's this analogy? I'm gonna butcher it. There was like an analogy that I recently used with a client when they were getting overwhelmed about and saying very much the same thing. It's like, I just want this in and I want it fixed and I want everything to work. And the challenge with operations is it's like you're flying a plane while trying to change the screws on the engine, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be super careful. You have to know that you're probably going to have some turbulence, right? And you
Yeah.
have to prepare your flight crew to
Yeah.
support your passengers along the way, right? And you have to hold steady and you have to pay attention and you have to just keep on going, right? And I think that is communication and really preparing not just the CEO from my perspective, not just the CEO, but the whole team that
Hmm.
we anticipate and we expect things to kind of be challenging for a period of time, and we all have to be ready for mistakes to be made, and things might fall through the cracks. You might lose a client, and we have to be okay with that. We're going to mitigate that as much as possible. Like the last thing I would want is someone to lose a client from it, but you have to also understand that sometimes change can get messy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what it looks like on the other side is so much smoother, and you're going to be able to get 3 clients, 4 clients, 5 clients back because of the way that you have improved what you're doing. And so for preparing teams, I think preparing teams for change is really, again, building that trust, coming in, really being able to communicate what the whole thing is going to look like and what really is all included, right? Because we can't just change a template and just say that we're going to change our Asana template and whoop, it's perfect. It's like, no, you change the Asana template, you create new training videos on how to actually use the template. You have to update your SOPs related to how to use the template. You have to roll it out, maybe give a team training. You have to then change it over to all of your existing client projects if you need to do that, right? So there's pieces that everyone needs to consider, and the challenge with ops is often people think it you can just, oh, we're going to just change. It's like, no, we've got a whole process for change,
Yeah.
and we really need to be prepared for that. And what was really beautiful at the end of Ditto was we got into such a cadence of it, right? So it started to be a point where anytime there's a challenge, anytime there's an improvement request, it would filter through our system, right? The intake
Yeah.
request form. We'd go
Yeah.
in and actually make the change, update the SOPs, put it out in the weekly training or the status updates, and then have it go live. And that's ultimately what we like, the cadence you get into once a team is able to adopt a culture of improvement and a culture of change management and continuous improvement, where you start learning that flow of what has to happen each time something gets improved and changed. But at the start, it feels so clunky, and you have to be ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely you do. And I want to call out the kind of differences, and I'm gonna bear all today, like an open book, right? Like everything you're saying, Chloe, it's like it's bringing me right back to where we were at, because like there we were changing so quickly because we needed to, right?
Mm-hmm.
We needed to improve. But it's almost like we were going at a pace that wasn't sustainable for like long-term success, right? And I remember hearing from some of the team members through different channels, it's like, oh, another change, oh, we're changing this again, or I thought we just did this, or this is confusing. And I'm like, why is this happening, right? Like we're doing this for the betterment of the team, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just not being received that way. And so like I think that's one of the things that, founders, CEOs need to be aware of, is like when it comes to improving, it's not just like go 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 all the time. It's this state of continual improvement where
Yeah.
you fix something, test, iterate, let it level out, and then move on to the next stage,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think it's that a knowledge and awareness, but it's also in what I want, like what my biggest dreams are is that more and more founders, CEOs, business owners, like people who start things, to consider ops from the start. And I know you did. I'm not saying you didn't and like at
Yeah,
all,
yeah,
but even the people who think that they've thought it all through, there's a lot sometimes that, can fall through the cracks. So implementing knowledge management systems from the start, right? Again, you already had those pieces in place, but having those from the start, having training, regular team trainings just slotted in,
hmm,
team communications, weekly updates slotted in, right? Pieces related to team management and team training available from the start, so that and part of onboarding is like teaching them about how we are continuously changing. And I think
yeah,
people are more and more adapted to it. um but yeah, it definitely is that can help mitigate some of those challenges in some regards, because I think some of the challenges we were facing was we were still kind of like implementing our change management system, right?
yeah, yeah,
um but also, you're spot on, right? It's like really giving the changes a chance to like bake for a little bit, like put things in, let things play, and have a Asana task, a bunch of subtasks that say all the improvements for V2 and V3 and V4, right? So like
yeah,
being able to actually slot future improvements and be okay with the fact that everything's not perfect right
yeah.
right away.
And I remember like Kate Penny was one of those people on the team who's always like, are we just gonna like relax for a little bit? Like we just changed, like let's figure it out. Like we shouldn't be changing so quickly. And she would always bug me about that and be like, why are we moving so quickly? And like I didn't want to hear it at the time, but like she was so right. Right?
Yeah.
Like we don't have to be moving this quickly. We should give some things time to settle. So let's talk about that long-term sustainable like transformation. Like you talk about knowledge systems. What are your recommendations around how to effectively train and then create these knowledge systems so that these transformations can be long lasting and the team feels like they're a betterment, to the company, not a hindrance to their work?
Yeah, completely. And I think we've touched on this a little bit throughout this conversation, but to summarize it in many ways is choosing a knowledge repository. I think you have great YouTube videos up also on how to do that in Asana. I'm pretty sure. I think you have a YouTube video on that.
Yeah.
But being able to build it, whether you're in Asana, ClickUp, Notion, anywhere that you can dynamically track knowledge and also ideally be able to assign it to people and mark if things are in or out of date and Google Sheets or Google Docs. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
so that's why I like Asana, ClickUp, or Notion, where you can actually tag things and create interdependencies between things. But if you don't even have that, just a Google Doc is fine, right? Like
Yeah.
document, have a system for documentation of process. That is going to be super foundational in order to really have places and single sources of truth of how things need to be done in your business. And without that, there's always going to be finger pointing. There's always going to be, oh, you told me to do it this way or that way or da 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 da. When you have a single source of truth for how to actually do your job,
Yeah.
there's no debate. And
Yeah.
ultimately, if someone ends up doing something according, like there's two options: either they do something according to plan and it's wrong, and then you change the plan, or you or the person doesn't follow the plan and
Yeah.
they're wrong for not following the plan, right? So
Yeah.
you have much more visibility and alignment within the organization, and it speeds up training, speeds up onboarding and all of that. So I would say at a foundational level, getting some documentation in place and not making it overcomplicated. Like I think like there's, you shouldn't have a SOP that has more than 10, 15 steps. If it's bigger than that, that's more of a workflow, right? And
Yeah.
so, really being able to have some of that internal knowledge stored. Um, that's one piece of it. And then, like I said as well, so like knowledge repository, internal knowledge system, whatever you want to call it, SOP index, anything. Um, then you've got the piece related to team training and communication. So I like to keep those two connected, right? So you don't necessarily need to have team training every week. You could have team training every other week. But I would definitely have these opportunities where the team can come together and talk about process and systems and like what's changed and what's been improved, ask
Yeah.
questions about what's going on. But also having regular status updates going out so the team can expect and know that they're going to be updated on anything that's coming out or they need to be reminded of um, or or whatever else is new within the company,
Yeah.
and having a system to track those, right? So these status updates and have records of all the status updates that have come out, all of the team trainings that have come out, and being able to have that type of system in place as well is super
Yeah.
important for the team to really stay aligned. So I
Yeah.
think I
Can,
can't
can you
remember if that's all the pieces, but I think that's
No,
a
that
couple
was
of things.
great. That was great. Can you speak practically like to the systems that you built? Like we're talking about internal knowledge management, external knowledge management. Like let's talk about the HubSpot,
Oh
client
yeah.
knowledge
Oh
base
yeah,
and
that
like the
that one was fun.
the SOP index and tech we use in the stack. If you remember, right, can you just
I
talk about that? Because like we still use it to this day, and like all the SOPs are like interwoven into the project templates for delivery, for onboarding. Like it's all there. So can you elaborate on that and the approach you went through to like branch all of that together so that it made sense?
Oh man, yeah, that's many beach walks in Bali. I was dreaming over how to make those systems all interrelated. The things you dream about when you're working for working in process improvement. But
Oh, totally.
yeah, so I think again, like single source of truth, right? So if you can link everything back to a single location, that's always like the best. So what we had was we had the internal knowledge base, which was in Asana. Our work management was also in Asana. Keeping all of that in one place is great because if you have an SOP that says how to send an email in HubSpot, and then you have a template in for project delivery for client onboarding, it says send the client and the onboarding welcome email from HubSpot. That's
Yeah.
the task. In the task, you can tag the Asana task, which is an SOP that says how to send an email in HubSpot. When you
Yeah.
change what's beautiful about that is when you change the name of that SOP in Asana, it changes the name of the SOP in that task template. So you don't have
Really,
to
yeah,
like, which, you know, I've had clients who were wanting some in things in Notion and some things in Asana, and then you have to hyperlink it. And I'm like, oh yeah, but it's not going to always
a
be
break.
perfect, like the exact
Yeah,
name. So I always like to have everything in one spot, in one tool. So those hyperlinks are quite easy and responsive. Um, but I think what's really great as well is being able to track then in those SOP, in the SOP index, for example, um, what things it relates to. So if it relates to the tech, you can link the tech and you can go over to the text, like it, like we'll have the hyperlink to HubSpot, to how to send an email in HubSpot. You can click HubSpot and you can read all of the other SOPs related to HubSpot. Like perhaps you're having an access issue to HubSpot, then you can open that tech stack up and you can see if you're having an issue running into logging into your HubSpot account, this is how you fix it, right? So I think that these internal knowledge management systems are just really important. I don't know. Did I paint a picture of what those looked like enough? I'm not sure.
we could spend 3 hours talking about it. So yeah, I think that's probably the best like
something
summary. But
something I created recently was actually in Notion
tell
and
me.
I'm not sure if we could do it. I was trying to think about how to, you can do it in some regards in Asana, but what was really fun is I did this build out that you have your SOPs in Notion, and each of the SOPs also linked to a workflow. And then you could click open, you have a workflow database. And in your workflow database, you can have, so like let's say it was like sending an email in HubSpot, for example, and we know that that's connected to multiple workflows, so you could tag multiple workflows. But for example, this workflow is related to client onboarding. You click into client onboarding and in Notion it opens up that data, like that page in the database for workflows, and you can have
Yeah,
like an entire intro into what client onboarding looks like, and then you can link and filter all of the SOPs that are just tagged with that workflow. So then you have all of the
yeah,
SOPs for that workflow. And then what's really cool as well is like within that SOP, you can actually link like roles, right? So then it's like I selected, that all of the client success manager uses this would use this
yes,
SOP, like, or you could say all roles, but like client success manager does. So then you can click client success manager and it opens up their page in their own database,
love that.
and it you can give the whole intro to the client success manager, and then you can also pull in all the SOPs the client success manager would need and section them out by workflow. And
I love
then
that.
you can actually then tag it to your internal team, your team directory, right? You got a team directory, and they're tagged to the roles. So then you can actually then see in the CSM role who on your team is assigned to that. And so that I would like, I haven't loved Notion for because there's a lot of people who are like huge Notion users. I'm I'm like getting more and more into learning more Notion, but this experience I was like, whoa, maybe.
Yeah, it's
So that was
huge.
a fun build, and really created a super centralized, everything was there, the team directory, the trainings and all those pieces. But the challenge with that is unless you build out your project management within Notion too, then
Yeah,
you're still going to have those linking, sometimes the linking challenges and whatnot. But you can't make it as that pretty and like that interconnected in Asana or ClickUp. Uh, You can do pieces and yeah, parts of what I just described, but not like that whole build. So that was one I
right.
just nerded out on recently.
These are the conversations I love, and I'm laughing because I'm like, I just want to talk about this all day. And on the Notion point, like, yeah, I came back to Notion at the beginning of this year. I'd used it years ago. SOPs were in Notion before Asana, and project management was in Notion before Asana. And now I came back and I'm using it to manage like personal life stuff. So I've created databases for all of our insurance documents and just things we need to like run our lives. And I love what Notion does around different views. It makes it so simple because what you just said, you can filter absolutely anything, just create a database view around filtered criteria. And so to your point, like I started doing this in Asana. So we have as you know, the stack tech we use, and then everything filters to the SOP index. But we had I can't remember where this like dropped off or why we didn't do it, but there was a point where like we wanted to put like our processes or workflows inside of Asana,
Yeah.
right? And so I've recently like started that project back up again, where now like every single high level workflow from sales calls to, you know, and how those are run to how to um, let me just pull it up really quickly because I don't want to mess this up. Because exactly what you just said is what I was is what I just started doing. So let me just read it off here. One second. Okay, so what I've done is I've broken it down by sales, onboarding, services like service delivery, marketing, finance, and then offboarding. So under sales, there's calls and meetings. And then within that, there would be how to conduct our connect call, explore call,
Yeah.
proposal review call, project alignment call before the proposal's signed. And then there's proposals. So how to do everything inside of PandaDoc, sales pipeline, how to do everything inside of HubSpot, and then all the like cascading how to's that go
Yeah.
under all these categories. Now there's custom fields for the roles that would need to be involved within that SOP as well. So I'm thinking now it's like we've got a project, which is the database for every single process or workflow.
Yeah.
And then we've got the project for all of the technology we use and all
Yeah.
of their cascading how to's. And then they all get filtered to this massive SOP index that's searchable and, you know, sectioned off by either role or department or function, right?
Yeah.
And then make that searchable. But now I'm like, if I want to do like different views like we would in Notion, I would have to create another project or filter it and have to keep changing those filters. And so there is definitely a distinction there. And I'd love to see that Notion build out. But like it's cool that you're doing that there. I feel like Asana is like so close to like linking all of this back. And it's like this is the stuff that I nerd out about, right? Like, and this
Yeah.
is why I could chat about this all day. But yeah, just very cool what you're doing. Um,
I think it's fun when you're in roles that like challenge you because like I wouldn't have chosen to do it in Notion, but my client was like, no, I want it. And like it was a requirement that it was in Notion. I was like, okay, like, you know, and I think that's what's fun about the way your and my brains work as well is that, you know, we know the system, we practice, you know, Asana is like what I feel really comfortable in, right? And right now
yeah,
I'm being challenged with like building things out in ClickUp and in Notion and some other softwares that I've not touched. And it's like once you recognize how you like, you know, if you have a common understanding of how like businesses need to operate and how you need to organize work across departments and across like not just across departments, but then how you can for delivery and team management and all those different pieces. Do you know those
yeah,
like foundational business areas, which most and a lot of CEOs and like founders and they get it all, but they don't practically get it all. They understand it, they're doing it all, but like they've not been trained often in how to actually then go ahead and organize that in a really easy to follow, easy to track way. So that's
yeah,
what's really fun about what we do is it's like we know how all those pieces all get interconnected, how they're all at play, how they all impact online based businesses and how you can really and not even necessarily online but businesses that need to operate using online tools
right,
um, and are able to do that for you know take those processes out of the CEO's head and put it into systems that can work for the whole team and that's what is really fun and this is actually funny full circle from back was like how did I get here is I left
yeah,
corporate because I felt like I couldn't actually impact that you know the CEO the founder or like these the employees and like have direct impact right I was a cog in the wheel of like the big corporate ladder right and I was
yeah,
just you know helping some rich company get richer and
yeah,
there's you know there's I'm not shaming that in any regard but for me I wanted it to have more of that direct impact right and being able to help this founder organize their brain so it's out of their head and they can maybe step outside their business and maybe take a vacation for once. That
yeah.
is what is so cool for me. And that's kind of, you know, that's ultimately how I got here and why I love this specific work that I'm doing. So
So good. So good. Um, Chloe, we're gonna have to have another conversation, but if you had to leave the audience today with just one message
Oh man.
regarding, I know, dig deep, right? If one message around your either your role as a founder um, and how process improvement, plays a role in the success of your company, like what would that message be?
Oh man, really put me on the spot. I would say that I would don't abandon your operations. You
Mm,
know, make sure that you're paying attention, slotting time and budget towards improving your operations. There's so much focus goes on sales, growth, which is very important. You need money
yeah,
to make the business run, but forgetting operations, forgetting to take care of your team, that's where, once you make the sale, if you can't deliver and your team's not happy, why are you doing what you're doing anyway? So don't forget your business operations, and find the resources out there that can help you, podcasts like yours, YouTube channels like yours, there's lots of free resources out there, but there's also lots and lots of ops people that are really ready to help. So
yeah.
um, you're not alone if you're having operations challenges, and you get the help you need.
I love that. Chloe shared some great resources. Another one is chloehandelman.com. If you want to check out what Chloe's doing, where's the best place to connect with you? Is it LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter? Where are you hanging out these days?
LinkedIn and the website. I think there's a contact form on my website. I gotta make sure there's an easy way. I think yeah, contact form. You can book a call to connect and talk about your business, and then LinkedIn as well. I am always happy to chat. So, yeah, those are the best places for me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chloe. And listeners, if you're looking for someone to come into your business, streamline how things work with you long term, and really integrate into your team in a more fractional sense, then definitely connect with Chloe. I'm forever, grateful for the work that Chloe did within Ditto. And I'm thankful for your time and you coming on today and sharing. It was so good catching up. Thanks for being
So
here.
good. Thank you, Marquis.